Imagine, more than 100 years ago, buying a set of encyclopedias which came with a free plot of land in Huntington Beach. But what's the story behind those plots? Do they really exist? And if so, what's there today? I'm Chris Epting. History excites me, especially history that's waiting to be uncovered. I feel like a detective sometimes, sifting through clues, chasing down leads, and examining evidence. That's why I've written so many books about it. When you discover an untold story, it sparks the imagination, it connects you to the past, and sometimes it even helps you see into the future. Welcome to Hidden Huntington Beach. When I stand in certain places, I can almost feel the history that took place there. This is one of those times.
Yeah, I have to tell you, ever since we started doing Hidden Huntington Beach, people have asked, when are you going to talk about the Encyclopedia lots? The Encyclopedia lots are this mythical part of local history, beyond just, hey, you bought a set of encyclopedias and got some free land. There's a lot more to it. But we're standing right now, as your maps indicate, on one of the actual lots. We're on Ellis near Golden West. Where do you begin to tell the story? One of those only in Huntington Beach kind of stories, and it did really help build the city's mythology.
It really starts at the turn of the century, right around 1900, the early 1900s, when the Huntington Beach Company was established and acquired thousands of acres here in coastal Huntington Beach, what's now Huntington Beach. They embarked upon a very aggressive land development plan, most of it focused down in the area we know as downtown.
Right.
And so their first tranche of subdivision was, 1,000 lots, between, say, 1st Street and 17th Street. And those were sold, improved, and they did pretty well. And so they continued to subdivide a lot of the lots in the downtown area, put in improvements, put in streets, street lights, landscaping, and so those were pretty attractive for people to buy. But at the time when Huntington Beach was incorporated in 1909, it was only 3 square miles, and it went from the coast to Beach Boulevard to Clay. That was all of Huntington Beach. Everything north of Clay was considered useless farmland. And so what they did is they subdivided most of this acreage to the north, including where we are.
Like near Central Park in that area.
Yeah, it was all 5-acre farm parcels. And a lot of, they didn't sell too well. They weren't worth very much. But people eventually started buying them up. There was somebody with the name of Brasimon who managed to acquire 20 acres of land, of these farm lots, up where we're standing now, north of Ellis.
The lots were about 25 by 100 or so?
Well, at the time he bought them, they were 5-acre lots.
Okay.
And then he had the idea to subdivide those lots from 5 acres into 60 lots, each of them being about 25 by 115. I don't know whether his plan was to sell them for development, but for whatever reason, he got the idea. He must have run into an encyclopedia salesman somewhere, but I do know that there are people that still have deeds to these.
Well, there's a couple
lots.
of different versions about an encyclopedia company, Encyclopedia Americana, I believe they were called, back east, and somebody conjured up this idea where if you buy a set for about $125, which in 1913 was a lot of money, you would get one of these 12 by 120 some odd foot lots, and people bought them.
Yeah. They didn't realize that they were out here on the side of a hill.
So it may have been kind of a scam almost to sort of sell encyclopedias. I always wondered, did the people selling the encyclopedias, were they here? Did they know what they were even selling? Probably not.
I think a lot of, at that time, I think a lot of it was done by mail.
Yeah.
Right?
But they wouldn't have seen a photo of it. They didn't really know what they were selling, except it was a lot. It was a piece of paper. It was a deed.
So the lots up here were sold between, 1913, 14, 15. This was before oil was discovered.
Right.
So at that time, they had a set of books and they had a deed to a lot in Southern California. Little did they know that 5 years later, oil would be discovered, and so a lot of them probably thought they were instant millionaires.
Which didn't really happen. I know part of the myth is that people raced out and collected their fortune, but that's not the case.
There really weren't that many oil wells drilled within this section of the encyclopedia lots.
Right.
But we managed to have one that's still operating.
1947, you said it was drilled?
Yeah, it was drilled in 1947 and is still pumping oil. I worked at the Huntington Beach Company for 15 years and was involved in doing a lot of the development planning for the old oil field areas. And one of the things that I came across was an old appraisal booklet that was prepared in 1923. And it assessed the value of all of the property that was owned by the Huntington Beach Company. In that book, 5 acres of the farmland up here was worth $200 an acre. So you could buy 5 acres for $1,000.
In 1923.
And it got, progressively more valuable as you got closer to the ocean, obviously. Even though there was a lot of oil being produced in the area, you may not have been able to get any royalties. So,
right.
In fact, there were probably only, as I see it, maybe 7 oil wells that were drilled as far as encyclopedia lots go.
So this myth of people getting rich off of oil, that really didn't happen a lot, did it?
I don't think so. I mean,
I haven't found evidence of it either.
It would depend if they got the mineral rights to the property that they got the surface to.
Right.
And if you don't own the mineral rights, then you don't get royalties.
How many were there?
So on the north side of Ellis, where we're standing, there are 300 lots. So there were 6 5-acre parcels that were subdivided. And so now there's about 300 lots on this side. There's about another 120 lots in 2 chunks on the other side of Ellis, on the south side of Ellis.
Talk about ownership today and how that works.
Right, so on this side of Ellis Avenue, this whole area from Golden West to Edwards has always been viewed by the city as an expansion of Central Park. And so the city, for the last 50 years, has been on an aggressive program to try and acquire as many of these lots as they can.
Well, they have to. I was talking to somebody in the city who'd say, in some cases where they've got to move a sidewalk or something, they need to get approval from the property owner, right? And they're going to track down these people all over the country.
Yeah, and that was the case, in fact, when Ellis Avenue was widened back in 1997. The city had to condemn a few of these parcels out. So far, they've been able to acquire, I think, 270 out of the 300. But there's still 30 people out there that have deeds to these lots.
That are not letting go, as we know.
I mean, the last transaction I saw, there was a listing online for one of these lots at $17,500. So the market value probably is, in today's market, I don't know, $20,000. But you can't really do much other than have the bragging rights.
You think there's about 30 or so that are privately owned?
Correct.
The city's
on this side of the street.
On this side of the street. And how far towards Central Park did they extend?
Well, on the map here, they run about 660 feet north of Ellis, right to the edge of the equestrian center.
Okay.
So right as you can see the hill go down there, at the bottom of the hill, that's where they stop.
It's funny, I spoke to several people who are part of the families that own some of the lots, and they don't like to really talk about it a lot. It's interesting, they love the history, but there are all kinds of ramifications and legal things that go on, and they're reticent to really talk a lot about or come out and speak to owning the property outside of just saying, yes, they own it, and they love that they have it, and they like the history.
Well, and yeah, I mean, if you're one of the owners of these out here, you can see the improvements as part of the urban forest and some of the riding paddocks. They've spilled over onto these lots, but I don't see people selling them. They probably have more of a sentimental value than they have an actual market value.
So what else do you have here?
So the other thing I was able to pull up was the actual subdivision plat maps that were filed in the county in 1913, 1914.
And these are the original Encyclopedia lots?
Yeah, this was the original subdivision signed by a gentleman named C.B. Tull, which we found out was the son of Brazimon, whose name appears on those deeds to those lots. So we were sort of able to connect the dots from Illinois back to Huntington Beach.
Interesting. Why do you think this story has taken on the importance and gravity that it has over the years?
I just think it's interesting. I mean, it sort of gave people who weren't familiar with this area the kind of the dream and the romanticism of owning real estate in beautiful Southern California, all for the price of buying a set of encyclopedias. So it was probably very lucrative at the time they were sold.
This was the land of opportunity.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, these people, the feeling is that they had purchased like a winning lottery ticket in that deed, right?
Right.
I think it plays into that as well, of the magic of California and all the promise 100 years ago.
Hollywood, orange groves. I mean, it was
Exactly.
very romantic.
And the thought that somebody sitting in a cold New England coastal town for $125 had purchased a part of that dream had to be very compelling. If you're ever driving, if you want to know exactly where some of them are, if you're on Ellis, the parking lot by the Equestrian Center, just know that this lot is actually, these are Encyclopedia lots right here.
Right, on either side of the urban forest.
Either side of the urban
10,
forest.
10 acres on this side, 10 acres on the other side.
Thank you for clearing all this up.
You're welcome. It's been a lot of fun.
Have you been over to Adams and Brookhurst, where there are the benches that sort
Yeah,
of
I've seen
pay
those.
homage
Yeah.
to the, what do you think of those?
I was surprised to see that. It's a great little installation of public art that tells the story.
It's weird. We're sitting here by Brookhurst and Adams in front of Jersey Mike's, and there's this random kind of Stonehenge of the Encyclopedia lots. And the city's redevelopment agency put these here a number of years ago. They're wonderful. They're like the only real physical acknowledgement of what took place more than 100 years ago.
The developer wanted something that could serve as a place where people could gather. They pointed me towards the city librarian to get ideas from about Huntington Beach. The city librarian told me about the people who had, in the Northeast, had been buying encyclopedia sets with a little bit of real estate that they thought would be enough to build a home on.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. The grift was that it would be enough to have a place to retire to or to move to.
You've really done a lot of important work and helped a lot of people, and really, I think, used art as a cathartic experience to help people get through tough things. When you look at all you've done, what place do the Encyclopedia Lot project, where does that fit within the canon of what you've done?
Well, I used to have a teacher, Emmanuel Jacobson, who said before every class, this is a class about learning how to see. And I think that is the role of the artist, is to help us all to see. And here was a story where the people who were being deceived actually got something wonderful from it, and how rare that is, and how lovely that is, and how we, at this moment, it's a thing to honor that Huntington Beach can be proud of.
I love that it's here. You can come here, you can sit, you can read, you can learn, you can have lunch. It's a really nice spot to sit and sort of catch your breath and learn some hidden history. If you want more hidden history, check out our Facebook group, which is simply Hidden Huntington Beach. We've got over 15,000 members there sharing stories and home movies and all kinds of great things. So hope you enjoy that, and we'll see you soon in another edition of Hidden Huntington Beach. Even when I was a kid, buying a set of encyclopedias was a thing. It was part of life. But that's faded away. I mean, and then it became digital encyclopedias, and like you say, now it's Wikipedia. But yeah, this idea, it's so antiquated. You buy a set of books and get a piece of property thrown in. It sort of harkens back to a a dishware set free with a full tank of gas. That mentality that we had, where you couldn't just buy something, you had to get something in return.